China is a huge part of the blockchain ecosystem with investments, with mining, and with projects coming out of China. And yet, the knowledge gap between what's happening in China and the rest of the world is growing. So, this video is an attempt to bridge that gap. And I talked to Jason Fang, one of my friends from China. He's been doing investments and in the blockchain space in China for over 3 years. And he was a member of Fumbushi Capital, which is the same fund that Vitalik himself is part and advisor of. Now, I do ask him quite a few tough questions in this interview, and he has to try to respond to that without offending any of his friends. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video and enjoy the fun. Jason, thank you so much for coming, bro.
Oh, my pleasure.
So, Jason, you've been in this space for 3 years. That's a hell of a lot of time. So, what was your initial passion coming into this space in the first place?
At that time, I mean, it was actually really interesting. Most people we met about, we talked about blockchain. We always had to start something from Bitcoin. So it wasn't really about blockchain back then. It was more about Bitcoin. It was more explaining about the basic technology and the promises that blockchain can bring to the industry, to different industries. Obviously, I believe I'm a big fan of blockchain. And just to give you an idea, in China there is the people from blockchain. We call it the chainers basically, and there's just the people who believe in the token. So I come from a background who I believe more on the blockchain itself. So I've always been a big fan of it. The reason why I joined the industry was purely because of blockchain technology, the ability to basically produce trust, distributed trust, without having to go through a centralized party. That type of concept is definitely very intriguing. But I think with all new technologies, you got to be patient about it. Initially there's going to be a lot of lags. There's going to be a lot of inefficiency. But moving forward, I think we've seen a lot of improvement. And I think it's for even in 3 years, I think we've developed a lot in our industry.
Right, and you've seen a lot in the 3 years. So you've been in China scene. Can you tell me on a ground level what's really happening in China right now? We've got a lot of misinformation here coming out of China. Mining's being banned. Cryptocurrencies have been banned. Oh, exchange closures. And then Li Shaolai just recently quit and said, "Okay, I'm not investing in blockchain anymore." So what's the scene like in China right now?
Well, the government definitely does not encourage people to hold cryptocurrency, but it's very hard, right? As you probably know, it's very, very hard to control that. I think that regardless of the ban from last year, we still see an increase of private sales going on from China. We still see a lot of Chinese citizens launching different forms of tokens or blockchain protocols and all that, and that hasn't stopped. Even today, that hasn't stopped. I think there's just there's more about quality of projects, but in terms of the investment side, that didn't stop.
Right, and we've seen evidence of the contrary as well. Right, we've seen Baidu, the biggest kind of search engine in China, launching its own blockchain. I mean, they didn't really talk; they're like tokenless. Like they don't want to be crossing that line. But it's the equivalent of basically Google launching their own blockchain. Is the government actually promoting blockchain scene? What are they doing there?
Well, I wouldn't say they're promoting blockchain scene, but I'll probably say that blockchain is still an area that they're heavily looking to invest in. I think blockchain does elements of blockchain does promise a lot of what we call improvement in efficiency. But from what I'm hearing right now, that is still ongoing, right? Which means that there are still projects that are claimed to be very legitimate. They'll start off with being an equity company. They'll start off focusing purely on distributed ledger technology or in blockchain. And then whether they're going to focus on a token, that's a totally different scene. I think maybe down the road when there's more regulation, there's finer definitions of how to launch a token, then maybe these companies will consider. But at this point, I think we're just sticking to pure blockchain.
One something that you described to me last year was that there were these factions forming, these groups of people who would support each other. It's like baseball teams.
Yeah, they're like
So,
clans, basically.
the clans. So are the
Yeah.
clans still around? What's happening with them? Are they fighting each other still, or are they like sticking closely to each other in that sense?
Yeah. I mean, most of these clans, most
That's
of
gonna be
these
hard. I
plans,
see
yeah,
hesitation there.
most of these plans are very quiet now, right?
Mhm.
They're quiet because they want to protect themselves. So some of them have left China. Some of them have just altogether stopped talking. And it makes sense because I think at this time you really want to be focusing more on what can blockchain really provide. And I think although there has been a huge rise in cryptocurrency and pricing of cryptocurrency last year, realistically, blockchain infrastructure and blockchain investment into the actual technology itself has been very marginal.
Okay. So yeah, so they're being active. They're like, okay, yeah, you know, we'll comply and bend the knee. And who are these people involved though? Like, who are like still the biggest players in China? Like, can you name names right now, or is that kind of taboo? You know, it's
Yeah, yeah. I probably wouldn't go up to naming names because that is different all the time. Some people just retired altogether. Some people have just stopped investing. But the big funds are still around. The big funds are still around. They're still investing. They're still looking for great companies, and they're still trying to make a return out of it. I think the goal here is to not focus so much on seeing if there's a pump and dump going on. I think the chance of having a pump and dump right now is very slim. I think you still have to focus on what kind of adoption this token can have. Where's adoption coming from, and who's going to use it?
so. How was Consensus Singapore? Was it a shit show? Was it huddling together for warmth? That's one phrase I've heard as well. What was your view on Consensus Singapore?
Well, I think consensus is actually quite unique. It's still like kind of the gathering spot for a lot of the crypto people in our, you know, I think it's still more of a, from what I've seen, it's still more of a party reunion week than a learning and educational week. I do think that's what it's, consensus developed to. The parties are crazy. Like we co-hosted one of the parties at a mansion in Singapore, and I think we attracted over 500 people.
That's pretty cool.
Uh, yeah, but if you look at the crowd, the people who are actually at the venue, that was a lot less.
Mm, mm. So there's like the weaker hands and the people who are in for just instant gain. Do you think they've been weeded out of the space? There needs to be some form of development. I think that's I've been hearing that a lot. Do you feel like the weaker guys who are just in here for the pump, are they gone?
No, I still don't think they're. I think they're still here. I think they're just speculating, kind of like waiting to see what's next, what's the next big pump, right? Well, I don't want to use the word pump because that's very misleading. I would probably kind of look this at a more uh, practical approach, which is again going back to what the token is really used for. And although I think a lot of investment have gone into infrastructure plays, I think our industry is really missing right now is actually adoption, right?
Mhm.
So the logic is very simple. It's you build a bridge, but there's no one actually using that bridge. And what that means is, my background is I've always been in investment in equity, blockchain equity. Initially, a lot of our investment actually went into blockchain enterprise. And I think going back, I think the most practical use case and the kind of the low hanging fruit for token use case right now will go back to blockchain enterprise. What that means is usually 20 to 30% blockchain technology, and the rest is centralized. Now, I know a lot of these technology a lot of these projects will seem immediately, it will seem like a something that's not disruptive, so it wouldn't be as sexy as something that's fully decentralized. But yet,
Decentralized Facebook, yay! We're gonna see it tomorrow. Mark
yeah,
Zuckerberg's gonna die.
well, but the point is, you got to be practical, right? I mean, how many people are there that is willing to hold a token for over 5 years, right? So maybe a VC like us, we're willing to do that, but for the average Joe who is in the community, it's really really tough to hold a token for over 5 years. And but then this is the kind of time frame we're looking at in order for infrastructure to develop, and then you have layer two on scalability, and then you finally have some form of DApp, and hopefully these dApps can reach consumer level. right? Whereas the whole low hanging fruits, it's from day one, it is a consumer level product, right? And that to me is something that's more practical. But from an investment perspective, that roof is lower. What I mean that roof is the disruptiveness is going to be lesser than the infrastructure investment, but we do see immediate use case, and I think at the time when we're in a bearish market, the immediate use case will be more sexy actually.
Right. So okay, breaking down a little bit. So I think that's very important to clarify my view as well. I think decentralization will come, but for consumer level apps, it's way harder to do so because the competition with centralized services and for already established leaders in the space like Facebook, that's going to be really hard. So to disrupt that, it's going to take a very very solid foundation in terms of scalability, in terms of going up. So I definitely see that agreement there, where an enterprise application or something that immediately needs decentralized trust, that's going to be way more powerful because there's no other like companies in that space at all.
Yeah, well, the logic is very simple, right? I think any form of new technology, two values can bring. Either it is replacing an existing technology, which is a lot of that is actually coming from the infrastructure and protocol investments, or it's improving existing product or technology. And this is actually more on the enterprise side. So we're not trying to say that, hey, we're going to replace the entire tech stack. We're going to go from centralized to decentralized. We're trying to improve certain parts of the existing product that this app company has that it wouldn't be able to use unless they use blockchain.
So Jason, you've been starting your own venture fund as well. So can you tell me like what kind of inspired you to do so?
Yeah, well, I mean, I joined a space and in early 2016 when I joined a lot of really talented people around me, and then obviously I think last year we've seen a lot of crazy stuff going on, which is pump and dumps and scams, and it's just crazy. So the essence of Sora Ventures really is to invest in projects that I think would improve our ecosystem, our industry, to make things better. And I think when in the very bearish market, you got to understand that you got to be very practical of your investments, and you got to be very practical about what kind of products you're investing in. And for us, we have an angle of investing into application, and the application is usually what we call the low hanging fruit, where we think there's going to be a faster immediate use case, where we think that the token can be used more widely. There's going to be more people using it, and our investment thesis is very simple: the more token holders, the lower the investment risk. So from that angle, you can probably assume that yes, there's a lot more what we call a lot less decentralization, a lot less blockchain technology involved. But on the flip side, we're getting a lot more users.
Yeah, for users to understand this. So now on to something that you're dying to talk about, which is the Sora Summit, the conference that you're organizing. Sora Summit is it's not in Vegas, it's in Macau, which is the Vegas of Asia. So now, is this gonna be a party conference, like what you call consensus, or is it gonna be like educational? What is your goal here?
No, it's going to be a bit better than Vegas for sure. No, it's all jokes aside, I think Macau will be a very interesting place to visit. You have never been to Macau, it's going to be awesome. We will be working with a portfolio company, and they're going to be showcasing something that's really interesting there. That's why we're hosting in Macau. But it is a conference on blockchain technology, and a lot of that will also include some form of investments. The idea is to bring a lot of the key players in our industries together and really talk about what is the next trend, what is the current problems we're facing right now, how we can work together as a team to collaborate and to make this industry better. Very simple. You'll notice a lot of conferences that people visit nowadays are more on the product, on the technology. But for our conference, it's less about that. It's more on the practical stuff. It's more about working with the third parties, like investors, advisors, exchanges, marketing people, community development people. These type of roles that could help projects, and I think these roles are quite important because these guys play an important part on growth in our industry. And so this will be less about what it's going to be when it's going to be the next protocol. It's going to be less about the technology, the scalability, the technical stuff, because you can listen to that on anywhere. Most of the projects, most of the conference you see around the world is going to be about technology, right? For us, it's going to be less about technology, more on the practical angle.
Awesome. So I hope people can check it out down there if you're interested in taking a trip to Macau, which is tons of fun stuff, and then you can go for the education stuff and the practicality stuff with Sora Conference. And of course, Jason, I'd like to thank you so much for coming here and talking and informing us a little bit about what's happening in China and getting to know you a little bit better. Because honestly, you provided so much help over the past year or so about what's happening, what projects are a little bit fishy as well. You're like my due diligence go-to source. So I'd like to thank you and appreciate that for you. And thank you so much for coming to the channel. And if you guys are watching this, there's so many questions about China because there's so many Chinese projects. If you have a question, ask Jason. I mean, I would love to bring you back on the show as well.
Yeah, I mean, feel free to just put a bunch of questions in the comment, and maybe in the next video we'll try to answer some of
And
them.
you can make Jason feel very uncomfortable. There you go, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you guys can tune in and hope you guys really enjoyed this episode. Of course, definitely check out Sora and the event that was being held over there. And see you guys next time.
Thanks a lot, Michael. See you guys soon.
Cheers.